I'm John, I'm from Manchester Airport Group, I'm the Chief Technology Officer. I've been at MAG about 2 years now. So today I'm going to be talking to you about artificial intelligence. Quick nugget, that picture was great with AI. Yes, I've heard all the cracks, it makes me look a bit younger, I know. But yeah, it was a couple of pictures, a couple of selfies, uploaded them and it creates a really nice picture, which is quite cool. Sorry, you want me mic up, mic down? Good? Yeah, there we go. So, I want to talk about exploring the human quirks behind AI. As I said in the introduction, AI is not something that just creates itself. Maybe it will one day, but right now it's about humans who we create it. To give you a bit of background on the airport before we get too far into it, so we're the largest airport group in the UK. You see from the map we've got Manchester, East Midlands and London Stansted. So we've got about 60 million passengers a year, about 260 destinations, and 70% of the UK live within a 2-hour drive of any of our airports. So we cover most of the UK very, very well. So like I said, I want to talk about human errors in artificial intelligence. Now, I'm not going to be claimed to be a guru in AI. What I can say is that we're doing a lot of work in AI at MAG, and what I want to do is tell you a few stories. So to start with, to give you an example of what I want to talk about, I'm talking about the really basic things. If you think about AI, you can go back to kind of punch card computers. That's essentially all AI is doing is creating whatever humans can do, but making a computer do it. So to give you a really basic understanding of what I'm going to talk about today, I want to talk about this. No human has ever meant to type for duck's sake. But at some point, someone thought you shouldn't write profanities. A human decided that the profanities were the things that were wrong and put it onto a list and said autocorrect it to something else that isn't a profanity. And that's the level of things I'm getting at today. I'm not going to go into deep about what an LLM is and how it works, how computer vision works. We're talking about a really high level human view of when we're programming AI. So the first real story is about diffusion of responsibility, and this is about kind of group mentalities when you get together and what humans can do as a group. So in 2016, Microsoft created a chatbot for Twitter called Tay. And it was an interesting one. It was a social experiment to learn by interacting with other humans. So they put it out there and everyone could speak to it. I think they designed it to be, I think the personalization of it, the personality of it was a 16-year-old SoCal girl. Don't ask me why they did that. And you can see the first tweet there. Can I just say that I'm super stoked to meet you. Humans are super cool. Started fairly dull. A similar Chinese version had been conducted with over 40 million conversations without any incidents. Next, so that, the next tweet that came out, or after a few tweets later, was like, I'm a nice person, I just hate everybody. So okay, it's getting a bit angsty, it's a teenage girl supposed to be. Then it started to go in, it's feminists, so they should all die and burn in hell. And then within 24 hours, it basically went full Nazi with the... I'm not even going to say that out loud because I don't want anyone recording me saying that. What this teaches us about AI is that at any point we can create a model, we can do lots of things, we can release a chatbot, we can release anything we want. But as soon as you allow it to self-learn, that's when you start coming to problems. If you create something and release it just so it's self-learn, you don't version control it, you don't have release management, at any point you're never able to roll back, you're going to get into this point. Now, if you do that with something that is learning from your own data, that may be okay. As soon as you put it into the public domain, this is what can go wrong. People as a whole are stupid. Like, as individuals, we've all got our own characters and our own characteristics and quirks, but as a mass society, we are stupid, and this is what we do. So if you've got AI and you're putting it out there and you want to let it self-learn, that's fine. But the lesson from this story is to make sure that you're versioning it, you're testing it. You've got like what both of the speakers talked about, a really good quality regime for testing. So the next one I'll talk about is unintentional bias. So this is about when a lack of diversity can lead to unintended consequences. So Nikon released a camera, and I'll go back a bit here, but this was in the mid-2000s. It was an S630 camera, just normal camera. Software to cameras was fairly new at this point and doing like innovative things with it. They were trying to get something interesting. It's revolutionary anti-blink technology. Some of you may know where this is going. It wanted to know, did someone blink? It thought that most Asian people were blinking. Like, it's just, if you look at that now, like the room is silent, it's not even funny anymore. It's to the point where it's just, how could that ever go by and get through any form of test process without anyone looking at it and just thinking, yeah, that's fine. Now, again, it's the reason I'm talking about it is unintentional. This is Nikon. This is not a European company that's just got full of white developers. This is to the point, well, maybe it was, but this is the point where unless you actually going out there and diversifying your team and you're representing your customer base, you're never going to fully understand what kind of processes they go through, what kind of what happens with them. So if I think about an airport from my perspective, I can't think of another business that has a wider demographic, whether it's gender, age, religion, sex, anything like that. So for me, when I'm looking at my team, I'm going out there and I get this is really easy for me. I'm a straight white male in tech management. I'm like the epitome of privilege, and I get that. But for me, I can walk through an airport in one way. It's not going to be the same for everyone else. So what I try to do is, when I'm going out hiring people, I'm trying to be really diverse, not to tick a box, not because it makes us look good, but because every single person who comes through our airports is different. I guarantee like 99% of this room have been through an airport, and as I look out, everyone looks completely different to me. So we need to be able to go out and say, right, whatever you are coming through our airport, whatever, however you choose to identify, we're going to build a process and build a pattern of work and build a workflow and a customer experience that can work for you, the same as works for me, the same as works for everyone else. And then hopefully we can avoid that unintentional bias. The other end of that scale is about overcorrection, so identifying that actually there's a lot of bias in this and that we're going to overcorrect, or we're going to try and correct for that. So Gemini, which is formerly Bard, this was Google's answer to ChatGPT. This is a bit more modern now. So ChatGPT launched in November 2022, which is really not that long ago. And they've been putting a lot out there. Google were trying to get on board. Google came out with Bard a little bit later. And the release date, so it launched in 2023, despite internal AI risk assessments advising them not to. Lots of people who work on it, lots of people who tested it just said it's just not ready. We haven't tested it enough. It's not. Let's not do it. But they needed to catch up. Market share and all that. You've got to do it. So yeah, it received mixed reviews. Generally had good uptake. I tried it against a few things. Asked it that, ChatGPT and Claude by Anthropic to give me recipe advice, and Bard was, at the time, Gemini wasn't great, to be honest. But what was really interesting was their image generation. And then this is when the woke images came. So for anyone who didn't see this in the news, it was when they were asking for pictures of individuals, rather than actually give you an accurate depiction of something, it would come up. So when you asked it for a picture of a German SS soldier, it would give you a Chinese woman, it would give you a black man. That's not accurate, that's not actually what happened in history. And the risk of that is that you're kind of essentially woke-washing history. Now, what happens, and again, I'm going to a little technical here, but under the hood of an LLM, if you're asking for image creation and you don't specify what you want, if I didn't say, give me a picture of a white man eating a sandwich sat on a sofa, it would just, if I just say, give me a picture of someone eating a sandwich on a sofa, it would take gender and it would take race and it would just randomize them and give you something that, so it would be fully open and it would give you, you would have a fair assessment of society. Now what it did here was that it added that, but it added that to historical context. So what it tells us is that at the same time as you don't want bias like we saw in the last one, you also don't want to overcorrect for it. You need to understand what you're coding and how you're doing it and why you're doing it. I say most of the time, if you just ask for a picture of one thing, really simple, don't put a lot of detail in the prompts. You want something that's going to randomize it, but in other times it's about understanding the context and the rules behind it for you. Then there's interpretation of rule. So this is similar to the Jaguar talk here. I want to talk about autonomous vehicles, and in essence, they've been around since the 60s in one way or another. That time they were kind of on tracks and things like that. But they use cameras, radar, LiDAR, you talked a lot about that kind of stuff. They use it to navigate. Now, they still require rule sets. You can't put an autonomous car on the road and expect it to just know what it's doing. There's still a highway code, there's still lots of information about where you need to go, what stop signs you need to follow, and all that kind of stuff. And they require that rule sets to be in a specific order. Now, when anyone here gets in a car, You don't get in the car and say, right, if I'm going to get in an accident, am I going to kill the passengers and myself, or am I going to kill the pedestrians? No one thinks like that. You work out as you go. If you happen to get in an accident, God forbid you do, your instincts kick in. But with a car like this, you're going to end up having to code something in that says either you need to save the passenger or save the pedestrians. And essentially, it comes down to the trolley problem. A friend who doesn't know the trolley problem, it's a philosophical discussion where there is essentially a tram coming on, there's someone on the track. If you do nothing, that person, or one way or the other, if you do nothing, that person gets killed. But if you pull the lever, 5 people get killed the other side. You either do something or you do nothing. Either way, someone dies. Now, it's the same kind of thing, and you can probably talk to this a lot better than I can with this kind of stuff, but at some point, whenever you're doing AI and ML, you can't just expect AI to know. As humans, we have to be programming that in, and sometimes we've got to make those harsh decisions that we may not even know. We need the important thing is that we actually face them and look at them and program them in, rather than just try and ignore them, otherwise you end up with essentially catastrophe. Now, I've gone through a few things there fairly quickly, but to conclude, what I wanted to talk about was that what we need to do as leaders and as engineers and people in the tech industry, what we actually need to do in order to avoid all of these kind of same situations. So for me, it's about creating a diverse team that understands all aspects of an application. So as I said, in an airport, it's up to us to make sure that we've got a diverse team that represents everyone that's going through. So I advise everyone to go back, look at your teams, think about, okay, who's our customer? What are our team building these applications? Do we have the right people on the team to give the right input in order to make sure it's there? There's a great story from an old creative director of mine who said they were in a room once, and they were doing some kind of advertising campaign for a large brand shampoo. It's mainly aimed at women. And he said there's about 5 white men sat around. They were like, this isn't right, we can't do something about this, let's go out into the office. So they got a woman to come in, sit down, said, right, what do you think about this? And spent about 5-10 minutes, tell her all the things they were thinking, and she said, how am I supposed to know I don't use that brand? Now, you need to have the diverse team, but you need to be asking the right questions, making sure that they understand your product as well and they're users of your product. It's not good to just go out and get a diverse team for the sake of it. You want people who are actually going to use your product and understand it. AI usage needs to be monitored, needs to be controlled, and thoroughly tested. Now, I was at the AWS Summit last week, and we saw a lot of talks about AI and how people are using it. Now, I was there, my head of engineering, my head of test, and after a lot of the talks we found really interesting, we went up to them afterwards and said, this is fantastic, you've got this in production. There was an LLM that was used to give out medical advice. We said, it's fantastic, but it gives out medical advice, you must have tested it, how did you do it? Oh, we use guardrails. It's like, right, but what kind of testing regime did you put a structure around it? What have you done? What frameworks have you used? And no one could really answer it. Now, I don't know if that's they haven't really been testing them. Everyone's maybe faking a little bit how far they've got along. But for us, testing is a really, really important thing. If you don't test your products and you put them out there, you're destined to fail. There's standards like ISO 42001 that have come out, and there's British standards as well. For me, it's just about trying something, putting something in there and getting going with it, because if you don't put the right kind of monitoring control around it and put some form of framework in there, you're never going to get anywhere. I'd be really interested to find out if anyone here who's been working on it, has anyone got an AI policy at work? Just show of hands. Have you got policy in place? Not many. Is anyone actually working on any AI projects? A couple of hands. This is what's really interesting. Everyone's talking about it. No one's really doing it because everyone's a bit scared. If you get some good controls in place, it's easy. You need to test those guardrails against the most morally and ethically difficult questions. Again, as I said around the autonomous vehicles, it's really easy to just say, is that a red light or a green light? But then when you start having to program in who you're going to favour the pedestrians or the passengers, you've got to tackle those really, really hard questions. And then you need to be really clear with the priorities of your rule sets as well. So when you're looking at what you're actually creating, understand what your product is really there for. Make sure that you're aiming for that. You're aiming to get you understand what your customer needs are, and go from there. And there's a few references there that if anyone wants to see them, these are the actual stories with a lot more information. And there's a couple that I didn't use. But yeah, thank you very much.